When my daughter changed the lock on the pantry, she said it was for my safety. That was the first lie she told with a screwdriver in her hand. I was standing in my own kitchen wearing slippers and holding a grocery list when Caroline knelt beside the pantry door, smiling as if she were assembling a surprise gift. "There," she said brightly, tightening the final screw. "Now things will stay organized." She stood, brushed dust from her jeans, and held up a small silver key between two fingers. I looked at the new lock, then at her. "Why is there a lock on my pantry?" She laughed lightly, the way people do when they know something is outrageous and hope tone alone will carry it across the room. "Oh, Mom. You keep buying duplicates. 3 jars of paprika, 4 boxes of crackers, 6 cans of soup you forgot you already had. This will help us manage things better." Us. Interesting word in the mouth of someone who had lived in my house for 23 days. The house belonged to me. Every board, hinge, tile, and tax bill of it. My husband Walter and I bought it 41 years earlier with borrowed money, 2 folding chairs, and enough optimism to furnish the rest later. We raised 2 children there. We survived layoffs, influenza, braces, termites, and one kitchen fire caused by Walter insisting grease had cooled enough. When he died, 6 years before this pantry lock appeared, I thought the hardest part of homeownership would be loneliness. I underestimated family. Caroline was my oldest, 46. Sharp-dressed, quick-speaking, permanently burdened in the theatrical sense. She could enter any room already tired. She had a gift for narrating her own sacrifices before anyone had asked. Her husband Mark was quieter. He had the posture of a man who had apologized too often for years and forgotten the original offense. They arrived temporarily after Mark's consulting contract ended and Caroline said rent prices were criminal. "We just need 6 weeks," she told me on the phone. 6 weeks is the most dangerous phrase in family history. They came with luggage, 2 laptops, expensive skincare, 3 houseplants, and a Labrador named Winston who shed like grief. I should tell you now that I was not helpless. I was 74, not buried. I drove myself, paid my own bills, volunteered twice a week at the library, beat half my neighborhood at bridge. Remembered birthdays no one else did, but widowhood leaves gaps people mistake for weakness. The quiet house, the empty second coffee cup. The relief when keys turn in the front door and someone calls out, "We're home," even if they mean your house. At first, I enjoyed the noise. Mark fixing a loose gate. Caroline cooking dramatic meals involving words like reduction. Winston snoring in the hallway, shared television, laughter, the feeling that perhaps old age might arrive with company after all. Then the edits began, small ones, invisible to anyone not being erased. "Mom, let's move your medicines into one drawer." "Mom, the bills are confusing." "Let me set up autopay." "Mom, you don't need 3 sets of measuring spoons." "Mom, why keep all these canned goods?" "Mom, the guest room works better as an office." Guest room. It had been my sewing room for 19 years. Then the office appeared. Then Caroline's files spread into the dining room. Then Mark's monitors colonized Walter's study. Then Winston's bed occupied the sunroom where I read every morning. Every adjustment was sensible alone. Occupation arrives disguised as efficiency. I noticed something else too. Doors began closing. The study shut during calls, the office shut for focus. Their bedroom, of course, then the pantry. Locked. I watched Caroline slip the key onto a ring already heavy with keys I did not recognize. "Where's my key?" I asked. She blinked as if the thought had not occurred to her. "Oh, I'll keep it central, easier that way." Central, there are many elegant ways to say control. I said nothing then, not because I agreed, because I had lived long enough to know absurdity reveals itself faster when uninterrupted. Mark entered carrying Winston's leash. He saw the lock, paused. Then looked away, also informative. That afternoon I wanted tomato soup. My pantry now required administration. Caroline was upstairs on a call. I knocked once on the office door. No answer. Twice. She opened it a crack, headset on. "Yes, I'd like the pantry key," she sighed, headset still on. "Mom, can it wait? I'm presenting." I'm hungry. She closed her eyes briefly, then handed me the key like a nurse dispensing medication. Please bring it right back. I stood there holding metal permission in my own hallway. Mark saw everything from the stairs, said nothing. I opened the pantry. Inside, shelves had been rearranged, labels forward, cans grouped by category. My baking tins moved to the top shelf where I needed a stool, my tea hidden behind protein powder. My emergency chocolate gone entirely. I found the soup, took one can, and returned the key. That evening, I wrote 3 words in a notebook I kept beside my bed. Pantry now locked. I had started the notebook when Caroline moved in, not because I expected war. Because Walter used to say, if something feels wrong twice, write it down. He had worked in insurance claims for 30 years. Suspicion was his love language. The next week brought more locks. A keypad on the front door. Modern convenience, Caroline said. No code given to me until I asked twice. Then a password change on the Wi-Fi. Then a cabinet latch in the laundry room because Winston was curious. Then one morning, I found the thermostat covered by a plastic guard. I stared at it. A clear locked box over the controls in the hallway, like an office building. Caroline came around the corner carrying a smoothie. Oh good, you saw it. You kept turning the heat up at night. I was cold. You were setting it to 74. I am 74. She laughed at her own joke. I did not. At lunch, I met my friend Dolers from Bridge Club. Dolers was 78, wore red lipstick like armor, and believed politeness had ruined more women than whiskey. I told her about the pantry. Then the thermostat, then the keypad. She buttered toast slowly. Whose name is on the deed? Mine. Whose money pays taxes? Mine. Whose pantry is locked? Apparently a state facility. She nodded. You're not being helped. I know. You're being processed. That landed hard because it was true. When I returned home, Winston had been moved from the sunroom. My chair had been moved instead. To the hallway, my reading lamp unplugged. The sunroom now held 2 desks, matching lamps, and a sign on the door. Productivity zone. I laughed aloud. Caroline, hearing me, called from inside. Mom. Could you keep Winston quiet? We're on back-to-back meetings. Winston was asleep. I stood in the hallway looking at the sign, at my chair. At the closed glass door of the room where I used to greet the morning. Then I carried my chair back in, opened the door, walked through, and sat down between their desks. Caroline removed one headphone. Mom, what are you doing? Reading. Mark stared at his laptop. I opened my book. It's loud in here, she said. So was my widowhood. Can you please use another room? No, she stood. Mom, this is our workspace. I looked around slowly. No, I said. It is my sunroom with computers in it. Mark coughed to hide a laugh. Interesting man. Caroline's face hardened. She lowered her voice. We're trying to help you stay independent. There it was. The sacred phrase, whenever adults want control over elders, they wrap it in independence. I closed my book. Then stop taking all the handles. She stared. I smiled pleasantly. That was the first moment she understood resistance had arrived. That night, after they went to bed, I walked to Walter's old study. They had turned it into storage for printer paper and unopened packages. Behind the bottom shelf sat the metal file box Walter kept for things that matter later. I had not opened it in years. Inside were manuals, policies, receipts, and one sealed envelope in his careful square handwriting. For June, if they start locking doors. I sat down on the floor and laughed until tears came. Then I opened it. Inside the envelope was a single key, a folded letter, and a business card. The key was brass, old-fashioned, heavier than modern keys, with a blue tag attached. The business card read, Harlan and Pierce, Estate Planning/Elder Asset Protection. The letter began exactly as Walter always spoke when he knew he was right. June, if you are reading this, then either I became dramatic in retirement or someone has confused your kindness with access. I hope it is the first, and suspect it is the second. Do not argue emotionally with people behaving administratively. Use paper. Call Miriam Pierce. The blue key opens the lower drawer of my workbench cabinet in the garage. Everything there is already arranged. Love, Walter P.S. If Caroline is involved, start sooner. I laughed so hard I had to hold the shelf. Even dead 6 years, that man could still diagnose our children accurately. The next morning I waited until Caroline and Mark left for a grocery run. Then I went to the garage. My garage. Though lately Winston's food bins, Mark's exercise bench, and unopened parcels had made it look like a distribution center run by amateurs. Walter's old workbench stood against the back wall beneath pegboards of tools outlined in marker. Every screwdriver had once had a home. I ran my fingers over the shapes. The lower drawer had always stuck. The blue key turned smoothly. Inside were folders, neatly labeled. House Banking Medical Trust. If June needs to breathe, I chose Trust first. Inside were documents I vaguely remembered signing when Walter became ill. At the time I was focused on medication charts, soups he could swallow, and pretending to be brave. I signed where he told me because he had always handled structure and I had always handled life. Now life had brought me back to structure. The house was in a revocable living trust. I was sole trustee after Walter's death, sole beneficiary during my lifetime. Caroline and her brother Daniel were remainder beneficiaries only after my death, subject to discretionary reductions for misconduct, coercion, or financial exploitation. I read that sentence 3 times. Misconduct, coercion, financial exploitation. Walter had not been romantic in paperwork, he had been precise, there was more. No adult child or spouse residing temporarily in the home acquired tenancy rights, without a written lease signed by me as trustee. No resident could restrict my access to any room, food storage, utilities, communication systems, finances, or comfort controls. Violation authorized immediate revocation of guest occupancy. I set the papers down and laughed again. The pantry lock alone had become legally comedic. I opened the folder marked If June Needs to Breathe. Inside was cash, $5,000 in envelopes. A list of nearby hotels Walter considered decent but not showy. And a note, never feel trapped in a house you own. I had to sit on the stool then. Grief is a strange country. Years after burial, someone still reaches back with provisions. At noon, I called Miriam Pierce. She answered herself. Pierce speaking. My husband told me to call if my daughter started locking things. A pause. Then June Ellison. Yes. I wondered how long it would take Caroline. I almost admired how predictable I apparently was. She asked me to come in at 2. Her office was downtown above a bakery, and beside an accountant who looked frightened by his own windows. Miriam Pierce was 71, silver bob, navy suit, eyes like sharpened glass. She read Walter's letter first and smiled. He never trusted charm. No, he was usually right. She reviewed the trust, then looked at me. Do you want your house back? The simplicity of the question almost made me cry, because no one had asked what I wanted since they moved in. They say they're helping me. Yes, she said. Many people say helpful things while standing on someone else's throat. I liked her immediately. What are my options? Several. She counted on elegant fingers. 1. Formalize their stay with lease, rent, room limits, and restoration of access. I pictured Caroline's face reading rent figures. Tempting. 2. Immediate revocation of guest status and notice to vacate. More tempting. 3. Temporary separation while we inventory finances and investigate whether they've touched accounts. That last one chilled me. My accounts. She looked at me carefully. Have they? I thought of autopay changes, password updates, Caroline insisting she streamlined things. I don't know. Then we find out. By 5 o'clock, I knew more than I wanted. Caroline had added herself as an authorized contact on 2 utility accounts, changed billing emails to hers, requested duplicate statements from my investment account to assist family budgeting, created a shared grocery spreadsheet linked to one of my credit cards. Nothing catastrophic. Everything invasive. Miriam called it boundary testing. I called it burglary wearing flats. We made a plan, no dramatic explosion, no hallway screaming, no accusations over casserole. Paper. Locks changed legally, accounts secured, written notice, inventory weekend. I returned home after 6. The keypad on the front door blinked red. Code changed. I entered the old backup code Walter once used for our anniversary. It worked. Inside, Caroline stood in the kitchen. "Oh good, you're back." We updated the keypad because Winston kept bumping it. Dogs now programming doors, remarkable breed. I wasn't told. I meant to text. She gestured toward the counter. We also made a family schedule for bathroom times. Mornings were getting chaotic. Bathroom times. I set down my purse. Mark entered carrying groceries. He saw my face and froze slightly. Interesting man continued to notice weather. Caroline slid a laminated sheet toward me. 6007, 15 household priority use 7, 15 7, 30 June 7, 30 onward flex window my own bathroom. Reduced to a slot. I looked up slowly. "Who made this?" She smiled. "I did, it's just while we're all adjusting." I picked up the laminated sheet, then tore it cleanly in half. Mark dropped a bag of avocados. Caroline stared as if witnessing arson. "Mom." "No," I said quietly. "June," she blinked. "What? My name is June. You use Mom when you want access." The room went silent. I placed the torn pieces on the counter. "Tomorrow at 10, be home." "Why?" "Because we're going to discuss what temporary means." She laughed sharply. "You're overreacting." I met her eyes. "Not yet." That night I slept deeply. When people think they are managing you, they sleep beautifully. When you know the papers are in order, you sleep better. At 9:50 the next morning, I set the dining table for 4. Proper plates, water glasses, not because I expected civility, because dignity should never wait for the guests to deserve it. At 9:55, I placed Walter's old brass clock in the center of the table and wound it until it ticked with courtroom confidence. At 9:58, Mark came downstairs wearing jeans and uncertainty. "Morning," he said. "Sit." He sat immediately, useful man. At 10:02, Caroline entered still on a call, laptop under one arm, irritation already arranged across her face. "I can't do this right now," she said into her headset. "Family thing." She ended the call dramatically and looked at me. "What is this? A meeting? We don't need meetings. You keep making rules, apparently we do." She dropped into a chair. "If this is about the bathroom schedule, grow up." Mark looked at the table. I almost felt sorry for his neck. I slid 2 envelopes across the wood, one to Caroline, one to Mark. "What's this now? Paper?" She rolled her eyes but opened it. Mark did the same. Their faces changed in different ways. Mark looked worried. Caroline looked offended. Excellent start. The first page was a formal notice from Miriam Pierce. Temporary occupancy privileges, revoked effective 14 days from receipt. No new locks, account changes, room reallocations, or access restrictions permitted immediately. All keys, codes, passwords, and administrative access to be disclosed within 24 hours. Unauthorized interference may result in immediate removal. Caroline laughed, a brittle little sound. "This is insane." "No," I said. "This is typed. You got a lawyer against your own daughter. I got one for my own house." She slapped the papers. "We moved here to help you. You moved here because rent was high. That's cruel. That's arithmetic." Mark coughed into his hand to hide something suspiciously like agreement. Caroline turned on him. "Do not start." Interesting phrase, I made note of it mentally. She faced me again. "You can't just throw us out." "I'm not throwing anyone. I'm ending confusion. We have nowhere to go. You have incomes, phones, vehicles, and the internet." "Mom, there it is again." She frowned. "What?" "You use Mom when cornered." June when dismissive. Which version am I today? Color rose in her cheeks. "You're being manipulative." "No," I said. "I'm being observant." Mark finally spoke. "Maybe we should just slow down." Caroline turned sharply. "Excuse me," he swallowed. "Maybe we did take over a bit. A bit. I appreciated the effort if not the scale." She stared at him like betrayal had entered through marriage vows. "You agreed with everything." He looked at the table again. "No, I avoided everything." There it was. The real marriage, suddenly visible. I poured myself tea. Steam is comforting during collapse. Caroline stood. I am not discussing our relationship in front of her. You've been discussing mine for weeks, I said. She ignored me. This notice means nothing. We've lived here nearly a month. 24 days, I corrected. You counted. Yes, people who are being erased often do. She paced now. Fine, we'll pay rent. Interesting pivot. Too late, we'll cover groceries. Too late, we'll help more. You installed a pantry lock. That was organization. It was appetite management. Mark laughed accidentally. Then looked terrified. Caroline stared at him. You think this is funny? No, you never support me. Miriam had predicted this. Once boundaries arrive, hidden marriages step into the light. Mark straightened slightly. I supported every plan because I was tired. She blinked. He continued, voice shaking but growing stronger. I was tired of fighting, tired of moving. Tired of pretending every problem was temporary. The brass clock ticked between them like a witness. Caroline looked at me. You did this. No, I said. I set a table, she pointed. She turns everyone against me. Mark spoke before I could. No one had to turn me. I was already facing the wrong way. I nearly applauded. Useful man had become interesting man. Caroline grabbed the notice again. 14 days is impossible. It is generous. Where am I supposed to work? Somewhere you don't call my sunroom a productivity zone. Her mouth opened. Closed, opened again. Good. Silence was educating her. I slid one more paper across the table. What's this? She snapped. Room restoration schedule. By tonight, pantry lock removed. Thermostat guard removed. Sunroom vacated. Study cleared. All passwords returned. My chair restored. Mark read it and nodded slowly. Caroline looked as if she might combust. This is humiliation. No, I said gently, this is reversal. She stormed upstairs. A door slammed, then another, then footsteps, then crying, real or tactical, hard to tell through hardwood. Mark remained seated. After a long moment he said quietly, I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. For what exactly? He surprised me by answering well. For enjoying the comfort while you paid for it. I nodded once. Good answer. And for letting Caroline treat your home like a project. Better. And for being relieved it was you instead of me. There it was, the honest center. I handed him a biscuit. Then start carrying boxes. By noon, the pantry lock was gone. By 1, the thermostat cover sat in the trash. By 2, my chair was back in the sunroom facing the garden. By 3, the study shelves were visible again beneath cables and unopened parcels. At 4, Caroline emerged wearing sunglasses indoors. The mark of a woman hoping accessories can replace accountability. I need space, she announced. You have 14 days of it. She grabbed her bag. I'm staying with Nina tonight. Excellent, I said. Take Winston, she froze. I'm not dragging the dog around. Winston wagged at the word dog. Mark stood. I'll take him, she laughed sharply. Of course you will, then she left. The front door shut so hard a framed photo tilted in the hallway. I straightened it. Walter and I at 50, smiling into wind on a beach. He had always hated drama, but he loved preparation. That evening, Mark and I ate soup in the kitchen while Winston snored nearby. He looked exhausted. How long has she been like this? I asked. He stared into his bowl. Long enough that I forgot there were other ways to live. That sentence stayed with me, because it was true of more than one person in the house. The next morning I woke to birds, sunlight, and silence. No headset calls through the wall. No Winston nails scraping hardwood. No Caroline announcing urgency before coffee. Just morning. I took my tea to the sunroom and sat in my restored chair. The cushions still held the shape of years. Outside, dew silvered the garden Walter planted in practical rows, and I later turned untidy with flowers. Mark appeared in the doorway carrying Winston's leash. He hesitated. May I come in? Progress often begins with simple sentences. Yes. He sat on the edge of the second chair like a guest in his own life. I found 3 more account passwords she changed, he said, handing me a page of notes. Thank you. I also canceled the duplicate statements. Thank you again. He rubbed his face. I don't know what I'm doing. That makes two of us, I said, but I own the house. He laughed weakly, useful humor. I studied him in daylight. Mark was not weak exactly, he was worn. There is a difference. Weak people prefer surrender, worn people forget alternatives. How long have you been unhappy? I asked. He looked at Winston. A while. How long is a while? He thought. Maybe since before we moved in. That was honest enough to respect. He left for work soon after with the dog, promising to return by 6. I believed him more now that he was no longer speaking through Caroline. At 11, dolers from Bridge Club arrived with cinnamon bread and the posture of incoming intelligence. I heard a vehicle left dramatically yesterday, she said. Neighborhood women are better than surveillance systems. I told her enough. The locks, the notice, the 14 days, Mark's awakening spine. She listened, slicing bread with unnecessary force. Good, she said. Good. Yes. People should occasionally meet the legal version of old women. We spent an hour listing every room I wanted restored once the house was mine again. Study repainted. Guest room reclaimed as sewing room. Dining room table centered. No more productivity zones. At noon, Caroline called. I let it ring. Then voicemail. Then again. Then text. We need to talk. Another text. Mark says you're being impossible. Interesting tactic. I replied once. Tomorrow, noon, kitchen table. She answered immediately. Fine. No mom, no June, just fine. By evening, Mark returned alone with Winston and takeout containers. She's staying with Nina another night, he said. Does Nina know the schedule? He smiled despite himself. We ate Chinese food at the kitchen island, because the dining room still held 2 monitors and an emotional residue. Halfway through dinner, he said quietly, she thinks you'll fold. I chewed carefully. Does she? She says once she cries, you always soften. I set down my fork. That was before she installed hardware. He nodded slowly. Then, after a long silence, I used to admire how decisive she was, and now, I think she mistakes force for clarity. That was a grown sentence. I approved. The next day at noon, Caroline arrived in white trousers and combat perfume. She entered like someone attending negotiations for a country she had recently invaded. No Winston, no Mark, good. She sat without invitation, also familiar. I want to resolve this maturely, she said. Maturely is another dangerous word. Then begin. She folded her hands. You overreacted because you felt displaced. I nearly laughed. Felt, you know what I mean. No, use accurate words. She inhaled sharply. Fine. We made changes too quickly. You restricted food, heat, rooms, and access. We were organizing. You were governing. Her jaw tightened. This dramatics is why Daniel never visits. My son Daniel lived in Arizona and avoided family conflict with admirable athleticism. We are discussing you, I said. She switched strategies, tears. Quick, efficient, glossy. I am under so much pressure. I don't doubt it. You have no idea what it's like being responsible for everything. Correct. In this house, I only paid taxes, maintenance, insurance, groceries, and my own disrespect. She stared. No immediate script for that. I need stability, she whispered. Then rent somewhere. I need family. You need leverage. That landed. She leaned back, eyes cold now. There it is, you always liked Daniel better. Wrong battlefield. I liked whoever wasn't reorganizing me. She stood abruptly. If you do this, don't expect a relationship afterward. I considered the offer. Then said, threats are poor rent references. She laughed once, harsh and brittle. You'll die alone in this giant museum. I stood too, slowly. Women my age know the power of unhurried standing. I was lonelier with you here. The kitchen went silent. Even she felt that one. She grabbed her bag. You'll regret this. No, I said. I'll repaint it. After she left, I sat down and shook for 10 minutes. Strength after conflict often looks like trembling. That afternoon, I called Daniel in Arizona. He answered on the 3rd ring. Mom, yes, everything okay? No, finally. I told him the broad outline, long pause, then laughter, not cruel laughter, stunned laughter. She locked the pantry. Yes, oh my God. Helpful response. Sorry, wow, then his voice softened. Do you need me there? There are offers that heal even if refused. No, I said, but call more often. I know, you always say that. I mean it this time. We shall see, I thought, but did not say. By day 7, boxes appeared in the hallway, Mark's first. Not Caroline's, interesting development. He found a short-term apartment near his office. 1 bedroom, allows dogs, reasonable rent. I can't keep living like this, he told me while taping cartons. With her or with yourself? He looked startled. Both. Good answer again. Caroline returned that night furious. You found a place without me? I found oxygen, he said quietly. I pretended to read in the sunroom with the door open. Sometimes privacy is overrated. She shouted for 20 minutes. About betrayal. Timing. Image. How could he embarrass her? Then suddenly, sobbing. Then accusation. Then silence. Then the front door slamming. Mark came to the sunroom pale and shaking. I'm sorry you heard that. I heard years of it in one summary. He sat down heavily. I think my marriage might be over. I handed him tea. It may have been for some time. Winston placed his head on Mark's knee. Dogs know before lawyers. That night I wrote in my notebook, locks removed, chair returned, sun called, truth spreading. Then I added one more line, house remembering itself. By the 10th day, the house had divided into territories, not by walls, by honesty. The sunroom belonged to quiet. The kitchen to schedules and careful politeness. The upstairs hall to closed doors and suitcase wheels. The study to boxes. And the front porch to conversations no one wanted indoors. Caroline had returned after 2 nights at Nina's, but only because Nina's husband apparently disliked extended chaos. Useful man. She now moved through the house like a temporary queen in exile. Sharp heels, short sentences, phone calls taken loudly enough for witnesses. Yes, my mother is being irrational. Pause. No, she's old and stubborn. Pause. We may need to challenge competency. That sentence reached me from the hallway while I was watering plants. I set the watering can down. Then I continued watering, not because I was weak. Because some statements should be heard completely before they are answered. At lunch, I called Miriam Pierce. She mentioned competency, I said. Miriam sighed the sigh of a woman whose clients regularly underestimate older women. Did she say it directly to you? No, to an audience. Good. We'll create our own. By 3 o'clock, I had an appointment for the next morning with my physician and, at Miriam's suggestion, a geriatric cognitive specialist. I'm not worried, Miriam said. But if someone threatens foolishness, I enjoy over-preparing. I did too. That evening, Caroline entered the kitchen while I was peeling apples. We need to discuss your memory. I did not look up. Do we? You forgot to put Winston's medicine in his food. I did not agree to medicate your dog. She ignored that. You've been emotional lately. I removed a pantry lock. It was invigorating. She folded her arms. See, deflection. I set down the peeler. Caroline, if you wish to test my memory, ask me something. She blinked. What? Anything. She smirked. Fine. What did we eat the first night we moved in? Store-bought lasagna, burnt garlic bread, and a Pinot Grigio you described as buttery, though it tasted like apology. Mark, entering mid-scene, laughed loudly enough to scare Winston. Caroline flushed. That proves nothing. Ask another, she hesitated. What did Walters will say about Daniel's boat loan? I smiled. It said no in 12 pages of legal language. Mark nearly choked. She stormed out. I finished peeling apples. The next morning I wore lipstick and pearls to my doctor. If one is being evaluated unfairly, one should arrive magnificent. Dr. Shaw had treated me for 9 years and possessed the dry humor of men who have seen too much nonsense. What brings you in? He asked. My daughter may be auditioning me for incompetence. He removed his glasses. Again, apparently I was not his first child problem. I explained the move-in. The locks, the threat, he asked questions. Names, dates, medications, current events, serial subtraction, 3-word recall. I answered cleanly. Then I asked him the score of last year's World Series and the active ingredient in his allergy sample packets. He laughed, sharp as ever. He documented thoroughly. The specialist later did the same with more puzzles and less charm. By noon, I had 2 written assessments stating I was cognitively intact, fully capable of managing finances, household affairs, medical decisions, and apparently better than average for my age. I photocopied them 3 times. At dinner, I placed 1 copy beside Caroline's plate. She stared. "What is this? Your disappointment?" Mark laughed into his napkin. She read the header. Comprehensive cognitive evaluation. Her face changed by paragraph. "This is manipulative." "No," I said. "This is indexed. You went behind my back. You attempted to go through it." Mark stood suddenly. "I'm signing the apartment tomorrow." Caroline turned. "You are not abandoning me because of her." He looked tired enough to tell the truth. "I'm leaving because of me." Silence. Then quieter, "and because you make every room feel rented." Even I felt that one. Caroline's eyes filled. Real tears this time, not strategic. Wounded tears, interesting. "You always choose easier people," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, I choose rooms where I can breathe." She left the table. The bedroom door upstairs closed softly, more painful than slamming. The next day, movers came for Mark's things. 2 bookshelves, desk equipment, Winston's bed, half the kitchen gadgets, apparently his wedding contribution. Caroline remained upstairs all morning. At noon, she emerged in pajamas and said, "You're all humiliating me." Mark answered while carrying a lamp. "No. We're refusing to continue." He left at 2 with Winston and 3 years of delayed spine. Caroline stood in the driveway watching his car disappear. Then she looked at me. This time there was no performance face, just a middle-aged woman suddenly alone in borrowed territory. "Are you happy now?" she asked. No accusation left in it, just pain. I answered carefully. "No," that surprised her. "I'm relieved," I continued. "Different emotion." She began crying again, the kind that bends the body. I almost moved toward her. Almost. Compassion without boundaries had built this month. Instead I said, "Come inside, there's tea." She followed me like a child. We sat at the kitchen table. No speeches, no lectures. Just crying, then tea, then silence. After 20 minutes she said, "I don't know why I do this." I knew enough not to answer first. "My mother did it," she said eventually. Now that was interesting since I was her mother. I raised an eyebrow. She gave a broken laugh. "Not you, the version of you I invented whenever I needed someone to blame." There she was, at last. The real Caroline, blinking in the wreckage. "I always felt second to Daniel," she whispered. "Daniel moved 2,000 miles away to avoid this family." She laughed through tears. "I know, I did not love him more. You trusted him more." That one landed close to truth. I did not deny it. She looked around the kitchen. "I wanted one place where I was in charge. And chose mine," she nodded. "I'm ashamed." Good. Shame faced early can become wisdom. Shame defended becomes personality. I reached across the table and touched her hand once. "Then stay ashamed long enough to learn something." She cried harder, and for the first time in years, I believed she might. The next week was the quietest we had ever shared. Not warm, not healed, but honest. Caroline no longer announced conference calls like weather alerts. She no longer moved objects while talking. She no longer said "we need" when she meant "I want." Instead, she cleaned, not performatively. Actually, cupboards emptied and wiped, counters cleared, bathroom drawers sorted. She removed labels she had made for my pantry categories, as if undoing a spell. I watched without comment. Remorse that requires applause is only vanity in morning clothes. On Tuesday morning, I entered the study and found her kneeling on the floor beside Walter's old filing cabinet. Papers surrounded her in careful stacks. She held one of his notebooks open on her lap. "He kept records of everything," she said quietly. "Yes, there's a list here of every tree he planted. He loved roots." She ran a hand over the page. "There's one where he wrote when I lost my first tooth." I smiled despite myself. "He also wrote when Daniel broke the porch rail and blamed wind." She laughed softly, then cried immediately after. "Complicated progress. I barely knew him by the end," she said. "Walter had grown quieter during illness. Pain narrows people inward." "You knew enough," I replied. You just stopped looking. That one hurt. Necessary truths often do. By Thursday, she had secured a short-term rental. Small apartment. Third floor, no elevator, mediocre parking. Excellent consequences. I move Saturday, she said over breakfast. Good, you don't have to sound pleased. I'm pleased with movement. She almost smiled. At noon, Daniel called from Arizona again, this time voluntarily, suspicious event. How's the revolution? He asked. Your sister now believes in leases. He laughed, then grew serious. Mom. I should have checked in more. Yes, I thought giving space was respectful. No, it was convenient. He accepted that, good sign. I can come out next month, he said. We'll see. Is that a yes? That is a sentence. He sighed the sigh of sons discovering mothers can age into judges. Saturday arrived wet and gray. Rain always makes departures feel cinematic. A rental van backed into the drive at 9. Two board movers carried boxes while Caroline directed them with none of her former authority. Power leaks quickly once no one fears it. I stayed in the kitchen making scones. Again, not because I was cold, because some endings deserve the dignity of baked goods. Around 10:30 she entered alone. She held a small cardboard box. I found these in the office. Inside were my sewing scissors, 3 photo albums, a silver bracelet, and the emergency chocolate I had accused the universe of stealing. I held up the chocolate. So it was you, she looked horrified. No, it was in a desk drawer. I laughed for a full minute. The tension broke cleanly. Then she said, I'm sorry for all of it. Too broad, I shook my head. Be specific, she nodded. I'm sorry I locked food. Good. I'm sorry I changed codes without telling you. Better. I'm sorry I used concern to control you. There. I'm sorry I made your house feel smaller. Best yet, I placed the box on the counter. Thank you. She looked relieved and disappointed at once. Real apologies rarely earn the grand absolution people imagine. They earn room to continue. At noon, the van was loaded. Mark arrived unexpectedly in his own car with Winston. The dog launched himself into the kitchen and immediately found my scones. Reasonable animal. Mark and Caroline stood awkwardly in the hall while movers clomped around them. He had lost weight. She had lost certainty. Sometimes divorce begins before paperwork and reconciliation begins before courage. I had no intention of predicting either. I came to help, he said. Good, I answered. Take the lamp in the study. It hates being ignored. He laughed. Useful man had become easier in his own skin. They worked together all afternoon with careful politeness, handing each other boxes like diplomats exchanging hostages. At 3, with only a few bags left, Caroline asked if we could talk outside. We stood under the porch roof while rain tapped the steps. I know I can't undo it, she said. No, I don't know why I become impossible when I'm scared. You mistake control for safety. She nodded slowly. I do, and I mistake your steadiness for something I can use. That was excellent work. And, she smiled sadly, I talk too much when ashamed. True enough. I reached into my pocket and handed her a small brass key. She frowned. What is this? The key to nothing important anymore. She looked confused. It used to open the old pantry lock. I had kept it after removing the hardware. Why are you giving me this? So you remember. She stared at the key in her palm, then began crying again. No theatrics now, just grief and recognition. I hugged her, briefly, firmly, without surrender. When the van finally pulled away, the house became quiet once more. But this time it did not feel invaded or abandoned. It felt available. I walked room to room opening windows. Study first, then guest room, then sunroom. Then the upstairs hall where tension had lived for weeks like damp wallpaper. I returned furniture gradually over the next month. My sewing room came back first. Then Walter's desk was restored in the study. The dining room table moved back to center where it belonged. The pantry shelves were rearranged exactly how I liked them, practical chaos with hidden biscuits. I never replaced the lock. Daniel visited in November. He brought flowers, guilt, and expensive olive oil from somewhere trying too hard. We sat in the sunroom while he admired the changes. You seem lighter, he said. I am, you know, he added carefully. Caroline says therapy is helping. Excellent. She also says you're terrifying now. Better late than never, he laughed. Then ask the question children eventually ask when they realize parents are not permanent furniture. Are you lonely? I considered it honestly. Sometimes, he waited. But loneliness with keys is preferable to company without them. That sentence followed him around all weekend. Christmas that year was at my house. My choice, my menu, my thermostat. Caroline came with a pie and humility. Mark came separately with Winston and wine. Daniel came early enough to peel potatoes under supervision. We were not fixed. Families rarely are. But we were arranged more truthfully. After dinner, Caroline handed me a wrapped gift. Inside was a framed brass plate. It read, Junas house enter with respect or bring cake. I laughed so hard Winston barked. Years later, when women my age asked how I stopped my grown children from taking over my home one helpful decision at a time, I always told them the truth. Do not wait for kindness to return. Change the locks yourself.